There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. The Secretary will read the first order.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Human Settlements.
Secretary, just wait. Let us wait for the housework to settle down with the other members around him, so that we can start our proceedings. Honorable members, will you take your seats, please? Order, honorable members, you're already delaying us. I don't want to hear further comments. Please read the order again, Secretary.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Human Settlements.
I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I hereby move that this report be adopted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have received requests for declarations of vote, and I will now allow for up to 2 minutes, one member of each political party wishing to do so, the opportunity to make a declaration. The DA.
Chairperson, every year this House adopts a BRRR report for the Department of Human Settlements, but frankly, I'm not sure why we bother. Virtually none of the recommendations adopted by this House last year have been implemented by our lackluster Portfolio Committee this year. No formal PFMA reports on disciplinary action have come before our committee. Not a single quarterly report on audit action plans, investigations, and consequence management have been forthcoming from its entities. Because of the failure of our committee to exercise efficient oversight, in the past financial year, while the department managed to spend 97% of their budget, they achieved 56% of their targets. On the formal housing program, they achieved 41%, their worst performance in history, and an indication of just how badly the ANC continues to fail the poorest people in this nation. Key findings include just over half of formal planned houses were delivered. No land parcels were rezoned in PDAs against a target of 30. Only 7% of service sites were delivered. Cities such as Nelson Mandela Bay and Mangaung delivered 0. On the provision of FLISP opportunities, the Western Cape outperformed the second highest achieving province by 300%. And despite all of this, performance bonuses were still paid to officials of the department. 71% of targets at the HDA were not met. 77 were not met at the PPRA, 63 at the NHFC, 65 at the EAAB. The Department of Human Settlements' continued underperformance and lack of consequence management will not change until we kick the corrupt ANC and their cronies out of power. 2024, Ulapa.
Order, the EFF. The EFF. The IFP. The FF Plus.
Dankie, huisvoorsitter. Hierdie departement se mandaat is om volhoubare behuising te fasiliteer. Deur eie observasie kan mens duidelik sien dat hierdie departement nie aan sy eie mandaat gestand doen nie. Wanneer daar verder na die afgelope vloede gekyk word, dring 'n besef deur dat hierdie regering beslis nie gerad is vir rampe nie. Huidige behuisingsskemas bewys dat basiese dienste en infrastruktuur beslis ook nie 'n prioriteit van hierdie departement is nie. What is more worrying than the fact that the department only managed to achieve 56% of its targets is the excuse of the COVID-19 pandemic that is still being used. Furthermore, 98% of the budget has been spent. Chairperson, 56 versus 98 is not good odds. Let me make this clear. You cannot spend all your money and have nothing to show for it. The AGSA indicated that overall, 3 years in the current administration, the human settlement sector has shown no sign of improvement in overall audit outcomes, performance targets, consequence management, and coordination. This was characterized by stagnant audit outcomes where material findings were reported for most entities, as well as poor performance against set targets. The AGSA identified projects that were incomplete due to insufficient and inadequate project management skills. The AGSA further observed that the current processes in place remained inadequate. On the follow-up on prior year's findings, it was also confirmed that accounting officers were not implementing a responsive action plan to address the AGSA findings. This was indicative that the call for action was not taken seriously, and this was driving they observed the negative trend of repeat audit findings. Een van die grootste struikelblokke in Suid-Afrika is behuising. Suid-Afrika verdien beter. Ek dankie.
The IFP.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
The right to
I think my member is online now. Chair.
So, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairperson. The right to adequate housing is a basic human right that is recognized in both the Constitution and international human rights instruments. Housing provides shelter for the elements, a place to eat, sleep, relax, and raise a family. The right to adequate housing ensures that people enjoy physical and mental health and live in a safe place with peace and dignity. The mandate of the Department of Human Settlements is to determine, finance, promote, coordinate, communicate, and monitor the implementation of housing policy and the provision of human settlements. This mandate has not been implemented or achieved. A lack of project management skills at both departmental as well as provincial level has resulted in both unacceptable standards and delays. A lack of responsiveness and adequate coordination by the departments with other government departments has resulted in fragmented human settlements in which citizens face barriers in accessing schools, clinics, running water, and adequate sanitation. The department's inadequate response to the aftermath of the floods in KwaZulu-Natal in April of 2022 is a microcosm of the issues raised above. In the floods, 4,893 dwellings were reported as destroyed. However, only 254 temporary residential units have been built. This absence of both timeous assessment and project implementation meant that displaced households could not become valid beneficiaries of TRUs, while the majority of those that were validated are yet to take up residence in the TRUs promised to them. Affected individuals and households continue to wait, crammed into temporary relief shelters, struggling with greater distances that they must now travel to commute to both work and school. Furthermore, the TRUs that were completed were done so at an unacceptable standard, with 100% of the units
Honorable Member, your
being
time is now
defective.
expired. Thank you.
With the above taken into
The
account, the
ACDP.
IFP accepts the report.
Honorable members, you must keep in mind you only have 2 minutes for a declaration. Prepare for 2 minutes. The ACDP.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good financial management is not always found in this department. While this regard for some of the Auditor General's findings, not just once, but year after year, are common. Not all accounting officers have taken the trouble to implement plans to deal with the AG's findings, and not all legal requirements are met. As a result, a total of 5 tenders to the tune of 13 million rands were actually awarded without being published in the tender portals. 4 of the 6 human settlements entities had governance challenges. while only 2 have done well. The ACDB believe that government has failed their people, and I think the time has come for them just to admit, we have tried and failed. Let's give somebody else an opportunity. Thank you.
The UDM,
No declaration, Chair.
the ATM. Good.
Yes,
The
House Chair.
NFP?
House
Good.
Chair,
Yes,
Can-
good.
I did speak, thank you. Can I proceed?
Please proceed.
Thank you, House Chair. So House Chair, progress in the human settlement sector and in improving our spatial planning is progressing at snail's pace. Informal settlements, neglected townships, backyard dwelling, and tent cities are the cold truth across our country. Housing projects are built at the edges of our urban forms on cheap greenfield land, creating large suburbs of poverty. While our national housing program has delivered an unprecedented number of housing opportunities in the democratic era, we've done so in a manner that has largely entrenched apartheid spatial plans. We've relegated the poor to poverty traps. By now, we should be able to look back at what we've built and have studied the socioeconomic outcomes of that large-scale housing program. And if we'd done so honestly, we would conclude that where people live matters, and a free house is not necessarily an affordable house. The report makes it clear that the department has failed to meet its basic mandate to provide housing, adequate housing, as required by Section 26 of our Constitution. Our country has a housing crisis, that the failure to meet our targets, which are already too low to address that crisis, means that we fail the millions of people who do not have adequate housing. The blame for this is shared by provinces and metros who implement the housing program on behalf of the National Department. The housing crisis and our inability to even reasonably meet the demand incrementally and meaningfully must force us to reconsider the housing program. The problem is not only one of poor planning, poor execution, or poor leadership, it is also systemic. The HDA stands at the peak of these failures. What has it done or doing with all the land it has acquired or which has been transferred to it? The Social Housing Regulatory Authority follows in the HDA's footsteps. Only 42% of the social housing target was met. While there are areas in the report which show medium to small improvements, it is clear that the prospects of meeting the 2030 goals set out in the National Development Plan will not be achieved. The department may report to us on numbers of housing opportunities created.
Honorable member, your time is now expired. Thank you. The NFP.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The National Freedom Party notes the BRR report tabled here today. Let me start off by saying this department only achieved 56% of its target after having spent 97%. Once again, we've mastered the art of spending but not achieving. National Freedom Party has repeatedly raised the concerns of the number of people in this country that are without houses. And that's why we have suggested, in order to alleviate this, the recommendation is that we provide fully serviced sites to those homeless people and then allow them to build these houses themselves. So government does not have to take the responsibility of building houses for people. And of course, you know, they could consider for those indigent people that really can't. Look at the reports of the Auditor General of Saudi India. For 3 years into the current administration, the human settlement sector had shown no sign whatsoever of any improvement whatsoever. Airports, the Auditor General has also identified projects that were incomplete due to insufficient and inadequate project management. Auditor General also observed that the current mechanism, the process that they have in place remains inadequate. Now, Honorable House Chairperson, how long and how are we going to actually support this department, particularly when it comes to the appropriation of budgets, when they spend 97% of the budget, but only achieve 57. Look at the issue of title deed, 73,764 issued in for the medium term target set of 1,193,222. So I think a lot of work needs to be done by the department to get this house in order. Auditor General has made its recommendation. I think it's up to us now to ensure there's consequence management. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The AIC.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, in our budget vote speech this year, we called on the Department of Human Settlement to foster intergovernmental coordination between human settlement government departments at provincial level within the regulated discipline of shared legislative and executive competency. We also said human settlement development grant allocated to these provincial departments must reach every single individual in the human settlement value chain. The committee report vindicates this proposition in that it clearly identifies the key role of the department as having to, I quote, facilitate the creation of sustainable human settlements and improved quality of household life, close quote. Part of unlocking the human settlement value chain is to invest in social housing, water and sanitation, transport and student accommodation in partnership with the private sector. While the department has achieved 56.6% of its targets, it has fared well in facilitating and promoting youth and women participation in human settlement development programs, as posted in the report. It cannot be gainsaid that human settlement is not only about housing. It is also about tapping into human settlement value chain. It is about dealing with housing backlogs and in partnership with the Department of Land Reform and Rural Development, providing title deeds to our people. It is about promoting sustainable human settlement to unlock direct investment in telecommunications, road infrastructure, and energy supply. And the work of the housing development
the PAC, Al Jama, the ANC.
Honorable Chairperson, the African National Congress declares its full support for the budget review and recommendation report of the Department of Human Settlement as adopted in the Portfolio Committee on October 26, 2022. Honorable Chair, the democratic government is dedicated and committed in the realization of the Freedom Charter and that there would be houses, security, and comfort. The department accomplished during the year under review, it is mangling the apartheid special planning and restoring the dignity of our people through the provision of housing and service stands and the upgrading of informal settlements have led us to the support of the bill. Honorable Chairperson, we welcome and support initiative by the department entities such as the Property Partition Authority, Partition Regulatory Authority in the quest to de-racialize the housing market by training young people to actively participate in the sector by becoming state agents. In addition, the department has managed to empower historically disadvantaged individuals through the development of female contractors, youth contractors, and people with disabilities. We further note the implementation of the financial linked individual subsidy to cater for those individual households that did not qualify for government subsidy and home loans. This initiative will go a long way in addressing the housing challenges for missing middle. Lastly, but not least, we are concerned about the fact that the department and its entities have remained stagnant in the previous 3 fiscal financial years, showing no evidence of progress in the audit outcomes. The Portfolio Committee has suggested that the performance-based consequence management for human settlement sector. As the African National Congress, in the Portfolio Committee of Human Settlement, will continue to play an oversight role to ensure that the department achieves its target as set aside in the medium-term strategic framework of 2019 and 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Members, I will now put the motion again. Are there any objections?
House Chair, please note the objection of the DA.
House Chair and of the FF+.
Noted. Are there any further objections?
Please note the objection of the ACDP. Thank you.
Thank you. With those objections, the report is agreed to. The Secretary will read the second order.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation reports of Portfolio Committee on Basic Education.
I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I move that this House adopts this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have received requests for declarations of vote, and I will now allow political parties up to 2 minutes to make a statement. The Democratic Alliance.
Mhlalanga phambili, these reports ought to measure whether set targets have a meaningful impact on the quality of education and preparation of learners for further education and employment. What they reveal is that the ANC government's poor quality education continues to destroy the future of this country while they plunge young South Africans into poverty and a life of despair. The Auditor General revealed that many learners still study in unsafe environments. They are subjected to pit toilets, dilapidated mud, asbestos, and plank schools, and overcrowded classrooms because Minister Mochecha and her department have allowed implementing agent syndicates to loot the infrastructure budget. A whopping 1.47 billion has been irregularly spent by implementing agents tasked to build infrastructure. This could have built at least 7 schools, eradicated all pit toilets, and installed Wi-Fi in 267 schools. Yet there is no consequence management for this looting. The report makes no mention of President Ramaphosa's special purpose infrastructure vehicle announced at SONA. And Minister Mochecha is attempting to remove deadlines in infrastructure norms and standards, thereby removing an accountability measure in eradicating of unsafe infrastructure while learners try to survive dying in pit toilets. Instead of building schools, the ANC government has chosen to bring legislation that scapegoats 1,200 schools of the 24,000 schools' inability to provide quality education. Yet DBE has failed to create learning environments that inspires learners and teachers as per their strategic framework. The minister continues to ignore our solutions, and that's why SACE has failed to even build quality teachers and train them and monitor them. Poor infrastructure and poor quality teaching contributes to dropouts. It is now the ANC's legacy that 3.8 million people are not in education, employment, or training, and 7 in every 10 young South Africans are unemployed. The ANC will never provide.
Honorable Member, your time has
They literally
expired.
destroy everything that they touch.
The EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson.
The EFF.
make-
Order, honorable members.
Chair, we make this declaration as thousands of our children are in the final lap of the examinations. Amongst these children are children from Mbindweni in Liwote in the Eastern Cape, who have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning in order to embark on a 4-hour trek to school. Others in KwaZulu-Natal are writing their exams while staying in community halls because the government of the day has not assisted them after the devastating floods that hit that part of the country early this year. Many of them in the Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Northwest, and Mpumalanga got their study materials very late in the year. As if that was not enough, a number of them got taught by unqualified teachers right throughout the year. Many studied on schools that do not have water, sanitation, electricity, and libraries. These are Black children who have born many years after we attained political freedom, but they have to live with the consequences of an inept, corrupt, incompetent, unsympathetic, and self-serving government of a Black predatory class that does not give a damn about the future of this country. The reality is that this department has even ignored their own norms and standards for basic infrastructure for schools. As a result, hundreds of thousands of people drop out of school every year, and there is no way of tracking where these learners go. The department does not know the reasons of these dropouts, and the country will inevitably pay because of the high rates of poorly educated and therefore unemployable young people. This is the most enduring form of hatred that the ANC has shown towards Black people. Black people must
Honorable Member,
reject
your
the
time is now
ANC if they
expired.
want improvement in their lives. We reject this report, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. The IFP.
Honorable Chairperson, The said most powerful weapon is starting to become a blunt, not because it's not important, no, by the doing of learners, but by the doing of the Department of Basic Education and its operations. The department has for too long left our education system and quality to deterioration in such a way that the vision that is as to improve the quality of life and building a peaceful and prosperous South Africa has become an ambitious goal. Even though the department achieved most of its programs at target, attention has to be paid to the special needs school have no access to electronic devices, no monitoring of school that did not perform well, and school where arts are not offered. The record management practice of the department have and will continue to cost the country and the children who will rely on the government for the service to be delivered, and ultimately, in a long run, compromise the education. It is quite shocking that the department has modified its financial statement, showing a clear lack of proper management and allowing for a lot of more corruption to take place within the department, even though irregular expenditure has decreased to 1.471 million this year. This is not something we can applaud or marvel, as it is quite high and still pose a huge obstacle to the department's ability to deliver its mandate educational services. It is in these numbers that we indeed see the inaction of implementation agents and their silent speaking volumes. We have schools falling apart in all over province of our country, and in this year, or in the year and year out. It's just like the year we hear the claim of infrastructure in school falling apart. It should not be acceptable that schools are not in full capacity and others are bare operating, but have hundreds of learners in them. Even though the department achieved most of its program target, attention had to be paid to the school who need access to electronic device. The department is to ensure that the Zoom.
Honorable member, your time has expired.
Learners,
Thank you.
we accept the report. Thank you.
Thank you. The FF Plus.
Honorable House Chair, if one looks at the core functions of the Department of Basic Education, it refers
Honorable
to-
members of the ANC in front and some members sitting over there. If you want to have a personal discussion, please go outside. You can't have it across the speaker that's currently at the podium. It's wrong. Please continue, honorable member.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. As I was saying, the core functions of the department, according to the paper, is transformation, access to education, and relations to negotiate the relations between the national and the provincial departments, which seems to me quite fine because there's no mention of quality education, which the department indeed does not present. Where there is quality education, it is more as a result of the work of the school governing body than of our department. Now, the department, of course, is not working on education where, om dit nou op goeie Afrikaans te sê, waar die tek die teer tref nie. The department is actually just facilitating what provinces should indeed do. Of course, also SAQA and the South African Teachers Association, Council of Educators is part of this department. Infrastructure rollout is not effective, and there's a golden thread going through all these reports, and that is that there is a lack of consequence management. Now, it strikes me that the way in which departments work with teachers is very much the same way that teachers work with children in school, not very well. Now, about the objectives of education, the child should be trained as a balanced person, a worker, a member of a community, and a carrier and co-creator of knowledge. However, what we find is that there are programs like the inclusion on different sexual identities, which is funded from abroad, not budgeted for and not accounted for, and nobody knows who makes the decisions about all this stuff. It is impossible to support the BRRR for this year. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. The ACDP.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Chair, the fundamental problem in the BRRR is its focus on inputs rather than on impact. We read in numerous places of all targets being met, but these are input targets rather than the evidence of these policies having an impact on the quality of education. The department needs to be held accountable for the actual impact that its programs have. If we can't see an impact, then a program must be scrapped. In the next BRRR, it is our hope as the ACDP that we will hear how many programs have been abandoned because they were ineffective, rather than about another expansion of programs that do little more than create unevaluated busy work for officials. Policy development in the DBE is in crisis. The annual report of the department did not include a full report of policies under development and progress against timelines for policy development, as was just indicated by Honorable Boshoff. The flaws in the Bella Bill are becoming apparent during the oral submissions, yet this bill was published for public comment in 2017, and the DBE has spent nearly 5 years processing the bill. The same applies to rural education. When the portfolio committee asked to be briefed on the rural school closure, we were told that the departmental frameworks were excellent. A few weeks later, the Western Cape MEC placed a moratorium on all school closures in the Western Cape because the MEC believed the guidelines and the frameworks are flawed. I want to welcome this step, and it highlights the confusion and incoherence in policy development, which is a core function of the DBE. We want to call on all MECs to follow the MEC in the Western Cape and put a moratorium on school closures. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The UDM.
House Chair, thank you very much. The United Democratic Movement is concerned that the department's programs contained in the report do not, in our view, entail any detailed programs or plans aimed at addressing the persistent and devastating challenges facing the basic education sector. There are no initiatives or concrete plans put in place to curb the alarming increase of violence at schools and the lack of security that our schools face, including the lack of improved technology and the attainment of the minimum norms and standards for public infrastructure, public school infrastructure, as the document was adopted many years ago. The reports, although the report reveals or indicates an expenditure on education infrastructure grant, but as you know, most schools lack the improved infrastructure. They still rely on pit latrines, which is particularly concerning. Amnesty International South Africa reported recently that more than 5,000 schools are still subjected to pit latrines due to the failure of the Department of Basic Education, despite the department's legal obligation to address this challenge. If the department fails to eradicate pit latrines, mud schools, bungalow classrooms, then it means the implementation of robotics, coding, and technology in all schools for the fourth industrial revolution is just a pipe dream. Enye ingxaki sisikola transport apho ufumanisa ukuthi abantwana kwiilali ngokwahlukeneyo basahamba ngenyawo kuba ezi zikolo ezi transport azifiki kodwa ziphinde zityhuwishele ukufuna ukuhlawulwa ziba namabali umhla nezolo kwilali kungekho ndlela futhi yokuthi ba-account. A research conducted in the Western Cape province also revealed that over 180 teachers have been attacked on school premises. There needs to be an allocation of resources in order to deal with this problem in collaboration with the Department of Social Development and SABS.
Honorable Member, your time is now expired.
All right, Sabulet.
Thank you. The ATM. Good.
We have no declaration, House Chair, thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The NFP.
Thank you, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, education is the key to success. Now, particularly if you look at the quality of education under the Department of Basic Education, where 1 in 2 children that start school do not finish school or do not go up to grade 12. 60% of those that go to TVET colleges drop out in the first year. There is very little or nothing to attract learners to school today. Now, if you look at the performance of this particular department, 91,000 children, Chairperson, gave birth to children last year. Many of them are at the age of 10. This department indicated that they were going to investigate this, but very little or nothing has been done to date about this. You know, when at least children as young as 10-year-old are giving birth. Now, the question is, what is this department doing with the budget that is allocated for them? Is this department really fit for purpose? Is it yielding the positive results we want in being able to provide quality education? Many schools still have pit toilets, there's no doubt about it. But now the department is talking about creating unisex toilets, despite 91,000 children giving birth last year. Really, we believe a lot of work needs to be done with this department. Look at what the Auditor General says, 78 million was spent by this department to implementing agents alone. They found that this Department of Basic and 1.4 billion rand in irregular expenditure. I mean, really, you know, it questions, and the emphasis in this department, Chairperson, is on quantity, not on quality. The minister seems to have an ego, particularly, or brag about the number of learners that are passing. It's not about the number of learners, it's about the quality of education. And that is why they even drop out in the first year. Look at the Eastern Cape, 147 schools have a problem where the water
Honourable
supply
member,
was
your
cut.
time is now expired.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The AIC.
Thank you, Chair. The Department of Education has an obligation to provide quality and accessible basic education to our people. In our 2019 manifesto, we made it clear that rural schools needed to be rationalized to maximum better coordination, efficiency, and access. We understood that resources must be streamlined for the greater good of our learners in rural schools. This will also help in process of bringing our education system in line with technological shifts. It is in this regard, Honorable Chair, that we take note and commend the department's intention to introduce coding and robotics in grade R to 3 in 200 schools. We also cannot overemphasize the value of childhood development and early grade learning. And indeed, our focus on childhood development will harness the potential of each learner and propel them to greater heights in society. Honorable members, all these lofty ideals will unfortunately remain mute if the department continues to incur irregular expenditure. The irregular expenditure of 147 billion rand incurred by the department due to non-compliance with supply chain management laws and regulations is a blight on the poor. A culture of consequence management must be inscribed in the DNA of the department. Without this culture, the non-delivery of textbooks in rural provinces like Limpopo and the Eastern Cape will continue and will one day explode like a cage. We, nonetheless, Honorable Chair, support the report. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Cope. EAC. Al-Jama. And the ANC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Education is an apex priority of the ANC, and government allocates a significant component of its budget to education. The department faces multiple challenges. However, the department has improved its performance in critical areas. The department annual report and its entities, Umalusi and SAIS, reflected an improvement in some areas, whilst Umalusi continues to receive a clean audit. We have raised our concern on irregular expenditure by the department and weaknesses in ensuring implementing agents are accountable and consequence management actions should be implemented. We have recommended strengthening governance and by supporting and helping non-compliant.
Honorable Member, may I request the ICT just to disconnect the audio of the Honorable Mashego. Please continue, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Chair. We have recommended strengthening governance by supporting and helping non-compliant
It seems to
Complying
me,
provincial
Honorable
education
Member, it
department.
seems to me the Honorable Mashego is still on the platform. I've requested for the microphone to be disconnected. Please continue.
We have recommended strengthening governance by supporting and helping non-complying provincial education departments. This will address challenges of efficient record keeping and optimal usage of grants allocated to critical programs such as HIV and AIDS grant and Maths, Science and Technology grant. We have recommended that the South African Council of Educators strengthen its efficiency in improving case management, sexual harassment related matters impacting teachers. On Umalusi, we have recommended that in collaboration with the Department of Higher Education and Training, consider and review the timing of release of the matric results, examination results, giving enough time for students' admission and placement. This is to improve the transition from schooling to higher education. We welcome the progress of the department in closing infrastructure backlog and its continuous curriculum recovery program. Report. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Members, I now put the motion again. Are there any objections? The DA?
House Chair,
House Chair,
please.
I see Council report.
The EFF?
House Chair, please note the objection of the EFF.
Thank you.
And Chairperson of the FF Plus.
Yes.
And the ACDP, thank you.
And the UTM Chair. Thank you. And with those objections, the report is agreed to. The Secretary will read the third order.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Trade, Industry and Competition.
I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I move that the report be adopted by this August House. Thank you.
Thank you. There's request for declarations. I will now recognize the Democratic Alliance. The Democratic Alliance.
Sorry, Chair, I'm just, my screen's just gone off. I'm just trying to bring up the speech here. So, Chair, we need to stop fantasizing about the development state and we need to start being an enterprising economy. Since time immemorial, the African National Congress have fantasized over the developmental state. They dream of a country where a benign dictator is able to rule by executive fiat, free from criticism by the chattering classes and opposition. An economy that is reminiscent of an Asian tiger in the mid to late 20th century, such as China, South Korea, or Japan. A country where the state determines the nature of the economy and which sectors to promote and not the market. A world where there are no international trade obligations to comply with, and they are able to implement tariffs and other protection measures at will. Sounds ideal? No, it's definitely not. What we need is an enterprising economy which allows businesses and entrepreneurs to create jobs, generate economic growth, and improve the welfare of its citizens, where there is an acknowledgement by the state that it is responsible insofar as the creation of a conducive environment for economic activity to flourish and welfare provision for only the most vulnerable. This is an economy which actively sources international investment and trade opportunities instead of trying to block them. It's an economy where the market decides which industries are competitive and not a set of master plans. A country where it doesn't matter what you look like and where you come from. This is the kind of country and economy that the DA wants to build post-2024. I thank you.
The EFF.
No, thank you very much, House Chair. Chairperson, the EFF rejects the BBR of the Portfolio Committee on the Trade, Industry and Cooperation. Currently all SEZs that are being established by the department are not functioning at all at this time. And this has been going on for years, whereas billions of rand are being approved to establish them. These SEZs have the potential to create jobs. The state must aggressively intervene to ensure that they are sufficiently funded and they're functioning. And the department must not rely too much on the private sector. Chairperson, The current industrial policy adopted by the department is not resulting in any job creation. The industrial policy, in fact, shows that South Africa is moving backwards in relation to industrialization as compared to other developed countries. Other countries achieve their industrial development through state-led development and decisive political leadership. This country is going the opposite direction under the Ramaphosa regime. Believe that massive privatization of key sectors of economy will resolve our growth and unemployment crisis. The NEF and IDC need to ensure that our people are assisted in accessing funds for projects. Currently, there's a high rejection rate of funding of Black people. Currently, and these industrial Black industrials, there are no appeals committees so that they can be taken to what led to the rejection of their application. The SIU report on the LLC alleged corruption is not finalized before the action is being taken. Now, we must ensure that the portfolio committee must listen to allegations. The portfolio committee must not listen to allegations of corruption until the report is finalized and submitted to the president. The overall progress on key aspects needed for growth in this country are not there on this PBR report, and the EFF will reject this report.
The IFP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. The Department of Trade, Industry and Competition's vision are to create a dynamic industrial global competitiveness economy characterized by meaningful economic transformation, inclusive growth and development, built on the full potential of all citizens. However, Chair, in the second quarter of this year, the number of unemployed persons in South Africa increased, circling to the total number of unemployed persons at around 7.9 million. Therefore, it's important that the departments prioritize job creation initiatives as per this report. Considering the investment drive, which has received an amount of over $1 trillion in pledges to date, we urge the department to use some of these funds to explore new economic opportunities in underexplored riches within industries. The purpose of the investment drive is to expand the overall output of South Africa's economy, therefore creating job opportunities and economic growth. Consequently, Chair, an example of possible new streams of job creation opportunities might lie in exploring the manufacturing of new energy vehicles or further develop the green energy sector. We know the government spending billions of rands bailing out SOEs, which impacts the department's ability to adequately allocate funds toward infrastructure development, which puts the department in a position of not being able to operationalize its mission of economic transformation. The IFP supports the report, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The FF Plus.
Dankie, agbare huisvoorsitter. Die 2022 begrotingsoorsigg en aanbevelingsverslag vir die Departement van Handel en Nywerheid en Mededinging. Dis van die beste en mees volledige en omvattende verslae wat in hierdie agbare huis gedien het. En daarvoor kan ek die departement en die komitee gelukwens. Voorsitter, die rol wat hierdie departement behoort te speel in die herstel van die Suid-Afrikaanse ekonomie en die skep van werksgeleenthede word onderskat. House Chair, while investment pledges across a number of projects could promote industrial development and job creation, the impact on labor absorption appeared to have been insignificant, given continued rising levels of unemployment. The Freedom Front Plus is of opinion that the DTIC should consider serious changes on outdated policies, to name BBBE but a few. The FF Plus will therefore not support the report. Thank you, Chair.
The ACDP.
Honorable House Chairperson, as we consider this report, the ACDP believes that this department is pivotal to the economic success or failure of South Africa as it drives the industrial agenda. Unlike most other departments, DTIC is not a delinquent when it comes to comparing budget spends to targets achieved. 98% of the 11 billion budget allocation was spent in the first quarter. 94% of targets were achieved, while in the second quarter, it was 95%. However, a blight against this department's good achievements was the rot at the Lotteries Commission, where more than 1 billion rand was looted at this entity. This scandal is yet another kick in the teeth of our poor, indigent, and vulnerable, as the unscrupulous, greedy officials at the NLC colluded with syndicates to steal from the poor. Honorable House Chairperson, the ACDP has long positioned that South Africa must come first, above political ideology, race-based and cadre deployment policies. While the minister acknowledged that during the empowerment process, lessons were learned and the worker empowerment objective is to provide equity to workers irrespective of their race. One only has to look at Eskom, SAA, Denel, and PRASA, to name a few, to realize that merit and not race-based policies is what is needed to grow our industrial base. While our president rubs shoulders with the unelected billionaires of the World Economic Forum, who have boldly stated to the people of the world, you will own nothing and be happy. Our people languish in poverty and unemployment. Let it be known to this House that the African Christian Democratic Party will fight this ungodly, totalitarian, secular, humanistic agenda with everything that it has. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The UDM.
No declaration, Chair.
Thank you. ATM. Good.
No
NFP.
declaration, Chair.
Thank you. The NFP.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, this department, in fact, there were several instances of fraud and theft of money going missing after being allocated to various infrastructure projects. In fact, there were 65 million rand allocated for several multi-million rand infrastructure projects. What is the beauty of this? That on the very same day that monies were deposited, these accounts were emptied. So you can look at the level of corruption that is taking place. 240 million rand was allocated. Some for, I can tell you, a rehabilitation center in Kuruman in the Northern Cape, where received 14 million rand for its completion. Since 2016, Brina, a non-profit company, has received 34 million from the National Lottery Commission. And a forensic investigation found that only 5.3 million of the 22 million originally allocated was spent on the center. Idumbe again, another one. Okay, 36.8 million rand was given to a contract, only 13 million was spent on this. So you can look at the high levels of corruption. Let me talk a little bit about the Competition Commission, Chairperson. You can, what is actually happening in the airline industry. The department has done very little or nothing to investigate the monopoly that some of the airlines and the price fixing that takes place. Exactly the same thing in the food industry and the food chain. You know, the very same manufacturers are the wholesalers and the retailers in price fixing. And of course, our people now with this Black Friday are being taken for a ride. National Freedom Party is not satisfied with the audit outcomes, with legal fees amounting to 78 million or 31% of all goods and services. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you. The AIC. Go. PAC. Al Jamal.
Chair, no declaration. You can't the PAC.
The ANC.
I stand on behalf, thank you, House Chair. I stand on behalf of the African National Congress to support the budgetary review recommendation report of the Portfolio Committee of Trade, Industry and Competition. The ANC fully understands that industrial policy is the backbone of any developing country. As a result, the reimagined industrial strategy aims to drive this by systematically supporting structural transformation through specific special economic zones and revitalizing industrial parks for broader and inclusive economic growth. The DTIC's budget has been adjusted up to 11.8 billion, with notable increases in industrial financing, competition policy, and economic planning, and industrial competitiveness and growth programs having been adjusted upwards by 1.4 billion, 748.5 million and 3.6 million respectively. We are pleased that there are increases into the industrial financing program because of the uptake of the services, investment and automotive incentive programs by companies across the critical sectors of the economy, as well as top structure under the Special Economic Zones program. While we support the efforts to deepen and intensify industrialization, we are concerned that some of the entities like SABS and NCRS that are meant to support economic development are being underfunded, particularly as it relates to their infrastructure upgrades, therefore inhibiting their ability to operate optimally. We support this budget vote.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Members, I put the motion again. Are there any objections? The DA?
House Chair, we object to the beach bar. Thank you.
Objection is noted.
Please note the objection.
The EFF? Please continue, Honorable Member.
Please note the objection of the FF plus.
Noted.
Please
Noted.
note the
Thank you very
objection
much,
of the
Chair.
ACDP. Thank you.
Thank you. The EFF, that is also an objection, I assume?
Yes, please, Chair, note the objection of the EFF.
It's noted. Are there any further objections? With those objections, the report is agreed to. The Secretary will read the fourth and the fifth orders together.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, Science and Innovation on performance of Department of Science and Innovation. Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, Science and Innovation on annual report of Department of Higher Education and Training and entities.
I now recognize the Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I move that this House adopt the report as read by the table staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's request for declarations. The Democratic Alliance.
No student left behind in an ideal world is what we strive towards. The DSI understood the assignment to achieve this under a constrained budget. They are clear on their mandate. Bulelani Vena, Valentine Makatela found themselves amongst 94,000 NSFAS appeals for 2022 and is still awaiting proper confirmation of their funding outcomes. 120,000 missing middle students will not graduate this year because they owe universities 7 billion debt. This with a student debt crisis at universities of 16.5 billion rand. USAF reporting that university application outweigh actual space available. Example, university for their enrollment space is 19,630 and 219,000 applications received. 39 million wasted on rabbit farming skills as identified by the NSF SIU report, failing to produce the necessary critical skills in the country through the myriad of skills development policies. The minister's plan is sugar-coated with the master skills plan. Minister Nzimande, totally ignoring the recommendation of the hidden report on student funding, played us like Zuma by announcing NSFAS will continue disbursing funds on the current model, ignoring the missing middle. To top it off, NSFAS is considering covering the cost of medical students studying in Cuba. This is a slap in the face of students studying in South Africa. When CETAs and NSFAS systems are not integrated to disperse bursaries, then yes, DS has left students behind and continue to do so. The long list of critical skills needed is a clear indictment of the failure by this ANC to upskill South Africans. A void left by public institutions that can and must be filled by private institutions. Time is not on our side and the unemployment rate is skyrocketing. Minister, either you get your house in order or you ship out. We welcome the letter, Minister.
Thank you very much. I now recognize the EFF.
House Chair, the Department of Science and Innovation has had respectable performance in the financial year, which is characterized by yet another clean audit. There has been the full or co-funding of 287 high-level research students, of which 57 are PhD level in designated areas such as advanced manufacturing, aerospace, and mining. The department must, however, invest much more meaningfully in beneficiation of scientific innovation in significant areas where the potential for skills exists side by side with mineral and wealth extraction potential, such as in the Platinum Belt. The disjuncture between innovation, skills development, and beneficiation at a local level is what makes the progress in the department seem and ostensibly be meaningless. The target to award bursaries to pipeline postgraduate students was not met is concerning, and the likelihood of those who needed funding being from previously disadvantaged backgrounds is high, meaning much needed insight and research propensity that is linked to local and societal needs is lost. It goes without saying that the nightmare of funding constraints to the department hampers progress, and the leaning towards private sector investment will not alleviate our developmental problems, but rather deepen imperialist control over the trajectory of development in South Africa. However, when it comes to the Department of Higher Education, nothing exposes it more than its callous attitude towards the TVET sector, where a measly excuse of a lack of availability of computer equipment is given for underspending on the provision of computers. Further to this, 135.89 million was underspent on TVET system planning and institutional support. It is surprising as well that there's no reflection on the irregular expenditure accrued at the National Skills Fund, which the minister, who's out giggling in London, tried to seal in the Standing Committee of Public Accounts most recently. Perhaps to put it on record for the nation to know, almost 5 billion is unaccounted for at the National Skills Fund over the past 2 financial years, and Minister Blaine Zimande was at pains in recent months to hide the report of this billion rands worth of corruption by asking this Parliament of the people to hide this information from the public, which elected us all. But even without this large-scale corruption being taken into account, the department has incurred irregular expenditure amounting to 2.44 million. Furthermore, to add that performance targets are unimpressive across all programs in the department, the unimpressive performance is unreliable and not useful if we're to take the findings of the Auditor General, who has found that supporting evidence of the targets which have been supposedly achieved did not correlate.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I now recognize the IFP.
Honorable Chairperson, the Department of Higher Education and Science and Innovation directly contributes to the developmental goals of South Africa. As a department mission is to develop capable and well-educated and skilled citizens who can compete in a sustainable, diversity and acknowledging-intensive international economy. However, the department is yet to address South Africa's challenges of youth unemployment as South Africans. Youth remain vulnerable in the labor market. This indicates that the target related to the programs such as community education and training programs are utmost important, as this directly contributes to the decrease the unemployment rate. Therefore, the department should aim to always meet the target of students enrolling at community education and training colleges annually. A further concern we have is the safety of community students, as well as the condition of the student residents in some institutions. The needs of community students are often neglected as much focus is placed on the safety of those living on campus. However, the recent release Kampembe report has always detailed how the social structures within the on-campus residents are bleeding ground for the ills, for social ills. Therefore, we urge the department to prioritize these issues, as the consequences will be there if left unaddressed. The IFP accepts the report. Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize FF Plus.
Agbare huisvoorsitter, baie dankie. Die departemente vir hoër onderwys, wetenskap en innovasie is nogal baie omvattend. Dit omvat al die universiteite, al die TVET colleges, al die CET colleges, al die CETAs, die National Research Foundation, die CSIR, die HSRC, Hydrogen South Africa, the National Skills Fund, and NSFAS. It's quite a list. And there are many problems. TVET are still not competitive with universities as preferred institutions of training. CETA still waste money. The NSF's money is still gone. NSFAS is still ridden by operational problems. historically disadvantaged institutions still not catch up with others, and they've been existing longer under the so-called democratic government than the previous one. Yet, in this committee, officials and the committee has created a very good understanding with each other. In addition, the committee itself functions in a very non-partisan way, in which officials are questioned and held to account equally by members of the ruling party and of opposition parties. Therefore, the BRRR is a very complete, comprehensive, and honest report highlighting all the problems that occur in these two very, very important departments. For this reason, the Freedom Front can support the report.
Thank you. I now recognize ACDP.
No declaration, thank you.
Thank you. UDM. Okay. ATM. Good.
No declaration, House Chair.
Thank you. NFP. Okay. AIC. COPE. PAC. Al-Jama.
Al-Jama supports the report. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. I now recognize the ANC.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. The Department of Higher Education and Training has experienced the highest budget allocation in response to the demand for higher education and free higher education policy. These strikes ensure that children of the working class and the poor have access to higher education and will contribute to eradicating poverty. We have recommended additional funding allocation to increase the enrollment of students in the TVET and the CET sector. A review of higher education and training budget allocation is an equitable manner between the university program and TVET and CET colleges is imperative to realize the national development strategy and plan trajectory in skills development. Making TVET colleges institutions of choice remains a critical priority for the ANC. Missing middle remains our priority. The MTT report on the student funding meant to accommodate the missing middle is out, and the minister is busy with consultation. As we speak, SAFETA and SAUS, student bodies that are representing more than 1 million students in the country, have been consulted. So the myth that we don't care about the missing middle is actually a myth. For optimal use of skills funds, an integrated information management system for SETAs is necessary to address the duplication and management abuse of skills development funds, which have found to be prevalent. The Science and Innovation Vote is well managed, and the department received a clean audit, with most of its entities having commendable financial and non-financial performance. Science and innovation are primary catalysts for development and social advancement. We have recommended that the department should enhance its collaboration with other departments, entities, and the private sector to ensure better coordination as science and innovation can respond to multiple challenges impacting state capacity and its ability to resolve socio-economic challenges. The African National Congress supports this report. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. I put the motion again to the House. Are there any objections? The DA?
Voorsitter, neem asseblief kennis van die DA se beswaar.
Thank you. ACDP?
Please note the ACDP's objection, thank you.
Thank you. I guess that's all. Thank you very much, honorable members. The motion is agreed to, and the objections will be recorded accordingly. Honorable members, the secretary will read the 6th to the 8th order of the day together.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services on Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, National Prosecuting Authority, Information Regulator, Legal Aid South Africa, Special Investigating Unit, South African Human Rights Commission, and Public Protector. Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services on Department of Correctional Services, and consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services on Office of the Chief Justice.
Thank you. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
House Chair, thank you very much. I move that the House adopt the reports as read by the table staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The request of declarations have been made. I now recognize the DA.
Voorsitter, hierdie drie verslae vertel drie jammerlike verhale oor hierdie drie departemente. Die departement Justisie strompel van die een krisis tot die volgende. Op die oomblik word hofprosesse tydelik opgeneem deur die tegnologie en onder die leiding van dieselfde maatskappy wie se oorspronklike kontrak al April verlede jaar tot 'n einde gekom het en nie vervang is nie. En die terugvoer oor die proses om 'n nuwe kontrak teen volgende jaar April in plek te hê, wat wil keer dat ons howe weer tot stilstand knars, boesem geen vertroue in nie. Intussen is baie hofgeboue in 'n ernstige staat van verval met die ineenstorting van die Potchefstroomse Landdroshof-gebou se dak, wat simbolies is van die manier waarop justisie en openbare werke nie omsien na die strukturele integriteit van ons hofgeboue nie. Dit alles terwyl die departement aanhou, soos in die laaste 10 jaar, om miljoene rande per jaar te stort in die bodemlose put, wat bekend staan as die vlaggenskip-projek om 'n geïntegreerde regstelsel en strafregstelsel te ontwikkel. Nog een van daardie droomprojekte wat 'n nagmerrie geword het. Korrektiewe dienste aan die ander kant is nie net onbeholpe en sonder geloofwaardigheid wanneer hulle besluite oor parool moet neem nie. Ongeoorloofde en onreëlmatige uitgawes is die reël eerder die uitsondering. En ook hier is 'n vlaggenskip-projek, die ontwikkeling van 'n geïntegreerde gevangenebestuurstelsel waarop miljoene rande jaarliks uitgegee word sonder dat daar hoop is om eendag 'n eindproduk te sien. Laastens, die onsmaaklike verwikkelinge by die kantoor van die hoofregter, waar voormalige senior administratiewe amptenare beskuldig word daarvan dat hulle deel was van die toekenning van kontrakte rondom die departement se vlaggenskip-projek om elektroniese aanlyn hofindieningsdokumentstelsels te ontwikkel en te implementeer, terwyl hierdie amptenare stilletjies in die geheim aandele bekom het in 'n maatskappy wat ook 'n rol sou speel. Maar veral ook die onwilligheid van hierdie kantoor om deursigtig verslag te doen aan die portefeulje komitee, wys vir ons presies wat die stand van die administrasie van die reg in Suid-Afrika is. Dankie.
Thank you. I now recognize the EFF. EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, the EFF rejects this budget review and recommendation. It is not a secret that this department is on a continued downward spiral, marred by underspending and underperformance, and a lack of will from its minister to see to it that consequence management is enforced for those who continue not to care. The Department of Justice and Correctional Services provides a very important role, that it is a custodian of those who have transgressed laws in our country. However, how can that role be fulfilled when within its confines, it harbors a lack of performance? Part of the role of the DOJ is an enforcement of South Africa's laws, rehabilitation, and correcting behaviors, and also providing skills to those incarcerated so that when they come out, they make it and provide a contribution back to communities. Its role is also minimizing corrupt activities committed and an oversight over those who are trusted with the coffers of its country. The fact that the Department of Correctional Services underspent on its budget, but overspent on its employment compensation leaves much to be desired and is unacceptable, primarily because most of our state-run prisons are deemed unacceptable. The matter of remand detainees being part of the problem in correctional services feeds into the concern that our magistrates and judges do not seem to find a connection between crime and sentence, thereby feeding into the overcrowding of our prisons. The department is layered with corrupt activities that it refuses to deal with. Part of the AG's concerns is the amount of litigations faced by the department. This is an issue that we should not be sweeping under the rug, as it undermines the credibility and reputation of correctional services. That the same department is part and parcel of procurement processes being flouted speaks to the moral ground that this leading government has chosen to adopt, that of corruption by any means necessary, that of lack of care for those that it's supposed to protect. Corruption within government departments continues to grow because our protecting agencies don't have their wings. Their wings are being clipped, so they cannot enforce proper consequence management and can only make recommendations. Our courts are not fully operational due to lack of ICT material and basic functioning IT
Member, your
systems.
time has lapsed.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
I now recognize the IFP. IFP, Mdasamzin, it's your turn, sir.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. The IFP reaffirms the concerns contained in the report. Thank you. In the report for the department and all its entities to capacitate themselves with the warm bodies to ensure a functional legal system. There is a huge need for Justice College to put out more trained officials to assist us with this plight. The featured open vacancies and failure of initiatives such as youth programs are quite discouraging considering the high youth unemployment rate. Vacant positions create instability within government departments, reflect a lack of leadership, disrupt the ability to deliver justice services to the people, and allow irregularities such as in the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development and the Department of Correctional Services. The Office of the Chief Justice must start taking the employment of women and persons with disabilities seriously. It has been 2 years of delays, and we cannot continue to accept subpar reasons as to why these transformation goals are not being achieved. For the department to solely state that, quote, the fight against fraud and corruption would continue, unquote, does not in any way assure us that it will. Our country has been for years being held hostage by corruption, and yet only little has been done
At your left-hand side.
to redeem us from
Professor,
this state.
Honorable Professor, just look at your right.
We need
side.
precise
Just pick up the
and
mic.
effective action plan.
Okay. Switch off the time has lapsed, Professor, Honorable Professor. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Prosecuting
No,
authorities.
time has lapsed, Honorable Member. You may leave the podium. Thank you very
accept
much.
this report.
No, honorable members, our linen, the honorable member has got a hearing problem, so that's why it's not undermining the presiding officer. Other than that, we shall proceed. FF plus, you are recognized.
Dankie, agbare huisvoorsitter. Die Departement vir Justisie en Korrektiewe Dienste is seker een van die mees verpolitiseerde departemente in Suid-Afrika. Ek het reeds in hierdie huis 'n hele aantal keer die opmerking gemaak dat Suid-Afrikaanse grondwet en die Suid-Afrikaanse regsreëls nie noodwendig gesien kan word as die oppergesag en dat politieke ideologie van die regeringsgesag dikwels regsreëls oorskadu. Die onlangse hantering van die paroolsake van Janus Wallace en die voormalige president Zuma is slegs 2 voorbeelde daarvan. Honorable House Chair, much can be said about the lack of proper management and expenditure on several programs in the department. The Auditor General highlighted several control deficiencies where leadership did not exercise sufficient oversight regarding compliance with laws and regulations regarding internal controls and action plans were not timely implemented to address prior years' audit questions and matters. This should not be the case, especially not in the Justice Department. The Freedom Front Plus will not support the 22 BBR report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I now recognize the ACDP.
Lengthy report deals with the whole department and entities such as the Human Rights Commission, Public Protector, Information Regulator, the SIU, Legal Aid South Africa, the NPA, and Correctional Services and the Office of the Chief Justice. And it gives a useful insight into the state and challenges facing the criminal justice system. The committee previously reported on the deplorable state of many of the courts. Some of the court buildings are so neglected that they become structurally unsafe. Other courts one cannot access due to a lack of running water and electricity. And when there are outages, clearly the courts can't sit. And this, obviously, the ACDP finds unacceptable because this results in a further backlog of criminal cases, a backlog in civil cases, and that, of course, puts pressure on awaiting trial prisoners and the size of our prison population. We know that justice delayed is justice denied. Another aspect which we appreciate that the Minister of Police is addressing is the issue of the DNA reports. There was a huge backlog in that, and that, of course, also adds to the criminal cases and the backlogs. Despite this, we do see the NPA has improved performance, and we specifically see the ID has succeeded with a number of matters in its regard. They do raise a problem with seconded staff of the ID. Those are SA police officials that still have to do their SA police matters as well as state capture matters. And this is something that cannot be continued with as it results in inefficient prosecutions and inefficient investigations. The challenge, of course, with these reports are the Auditor General gave qualified audit opinions for the Departments of Justice, for Correctional Services, and there were a number of targets that were not met. Now, this is a massive concern because this is ongoing. For example, if one looks at the issues where we as a committee have seen oversight, we've seen things that do not tally with what the department is telling us. And so, regrettably, whilst there is improvement, the ACDP will not support this report. I thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize the UTM. I now recognize the ATM. I recognize the good.
House Chair, we have no declaration. Thank you.
Thank you. NFP, you are being recognized. Okay. AIC. COPE. PAC.
No declaration, Chair.
Thank you very much. I now recognize the Al-Jama. I now recognize the ANC.
Honorable House Chair, we, the African National Congress, rise to support the report of all the departments that have been listed in this ordinance. Democratic states, any democratic state, which are governed by the rule of law, the Department of Justice plays an important role in the functioning of the state. We wish to commend the Department of Correctional Services for achieving its target of unqualified audit opinion. We encourage the department to work towards improving on matters of emphasis raised by the Auditor General. The persistent challenge of overcrowding is a cause for concern. We urge the department to find a lasting solution to address overcrowding. It will be important for the DCS to look at other models of how best to deal with prisoners of poverty. Those prisoners who are in jail on the basis that they could not pay bail. Regarding the aging infrastructure in many of the correctional facilities, the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services is requested to engage with the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure to look into the state of infrastructure in the Department of Correctional Services and come up with the integrated plan to address these challenges. We commend the National Prosecuting Authority on its improved performance and welcome the report that it exceeded its target for the conviction of sexual offenses and that the number of TCCs increased from 55 to 60. Much work is being done on the DNA backlog project. Despite the challenges, this will assist in the fight against GBV. We know that the department has committed to clearing backlogs in the master's office. We hope that this commitment will be realized and will be followed up on the matter. We will follow up on the matter. Funds have been prioritized to the Legal Aid South Africa over the MTF period, capacitate the 6 newly established specialized commercial crimes courts. We are pleased with the OCJ's report on progress concerning the employment of women in senior management, although it has not yet met the target of 50%. We'll continue to monitor the work of all these departments. Honorable House Chair,
Thank you.
the judges that are advocating cases both in the Constitutional Court and
Thank you.
we support the reform.
Thank you. I now put the motion before order, honorable members. There's a point of order. Oh, okay. I put the motion before the House. Any objections? Okay, ACDP.
Please
FF
note
plus.
the objection of the ACDP.
And of the FF plus.
Thank you. The objection shall be recorded accordingly. The motion has been agreed to. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, order please. Arising from discussions in the National Assembly Rules Committee meeting yesterday, where the matter of orderly conclusion of sittings was raised. The agreement is that going forward, at adjournment of the sitting, members should stand and wait for the chair and the maids to leave the chamber. Honorable members, that concludes the business for the order of the day. The sitting is adjourned.
Long live the House Chair.
Long live.
Long live Mahathir.